Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Travis Sylvester, and today we got an update on the 61 Impala. The 61 Impala just got back from Metalworks in Eugene, Oregon. We had the whole thing acid dipped to remove all the paint and body filler and be all the way back down to ground zero with just metal, nothing else. Every single square inch will be completely clean, and we just want to go into the details of why we chose acid dipping versus, say, sandblasting and all the other options. We have videos on all the different options and things you can do, but for this particular project, to avoid the amount of filler that we would have had to strip, this car was excessively thick. And I mean 1/4 inch door thicknesses, and you could just see inside the quarter panels that there was some damage like you see here. Ultimately, the last car that we mechanically stripped that had that much filler, the amount of labor cost that it took to do that was a complete wash for acid dipping. So we chose acid dipping, and the other good benefit to it is that it completely neutralizes any of the rust you have, as well as if you've had a car that was sandblasted and you put it on a rotisserie and you flip that thing back and forth, and as you're trying to paint the sand, no matter what you do, you will never get rid of all the sand in that car. Not to mention, sandblasting warps the heck out of the car, not because of the heat, because of the sand particles that it hits. So this was overall the best option. But what happens when you get your car and you're overwhelmed with the amount of damage that you found? We want to help you guys with your projects on dissecting and coming up with a game plan that you can actually compartmentalize and actually work through it, instead of being stale and sitting in your garage staring at the car going, what do I do next? I don't know what to do. Maybe you have certain metal work like this entire back window channel that's completely eaten away, and they don't make this. This is one of like 500 cars that they made. This is not a Biscayne, this is an actual 61 Impala. So a different trim package. However, what happens if you have that much damage on your quarter panel and it's out of your ability to fix it? Everything starts here. This is ground zero. If you're planning a build, doesn't matter if it's a stock restoration, a resto mod, any of those things, you need to get the car back down to metal so you don't cover over things that are excessive. This car had like 5 paint jobs on it, and there was tons of problems with cracking, and then the car would go to the next shop and they would tell the customer that it was stripped, and what they would do is they would just grind the cracked area, refill, but nobody ever found why the area was cracking. Well, there's a freaking hole right there. You have to get everything back down so you can see what you have to work with. You can't put filler over cancer holes. You have to get everything back to the state that it's in. So you got time and budget. You need to know what your abilities are and what you're willing to tackle yourself, or maybe you're going to farm it out. But the problem that I see often in this shop is that we get cars that have been at 2, 3 plus shops and they're having issues, and it's because a lot of those shops are putting the smoke and mirrors out for people, and they just see the car get dropped off and it looks like this, and they get the car back and it's all smooth and painted. Start with your fabrication. If the shop does not do, if they're a body shop and they don't do fabrication or complete sheet metal repairs, that's kind of rule number 1. Get everything good in metal first. So pick a reputable shop that's going to be open and honest with you to do the repairs. You should be able to be shown. Like, don't go to a shop that you think is good and, oh yeah, they fixed the metal work and they went ahead and sealed it all up in body work and paint. You have no clue what they got. Make sure you're getting pictures, video, whatever it may be. Maybe you often see the shop, but I will tell you that across the board on all the shops, you need to be checking in on that shop if you don't trust them or if they're not being transparent with you. Because a lot of shops, like the one that this had seen before, was just covered up a lot of problems that just kept showing its face over and over again. We are going to be showing tutorials on this entire build from start to finish. This is not going to be just a sheet metal and body and paint. This is going to be a full build dissection of motor, trans, chassis build, custom, everything. So pick a shop that's going to be, like I said, transparent, where you can actually see this in metal, be fixed, and then seal it up in some primer. After you have gotten the shop, or you yourself has fixed all the metal work, so all the cancers repaired, you need to get everything sealed up. In this case, because we have excessive metal work, the car's not perfect, we're gonna seal it now. So we got the car back from acid dipping. It kind of looked like a nickel or a penny. Has a very different look when everything is acid washed, and we wanted the mechanical tooth. So we actually scuffed the entire body with a DA with 80 grit. So that way we have a mechanical bond as well as everything is chemically neutralized. At that point, we are going to be using PPG's VP 2050 epoxy primer, and the best part about that particular primer, and again, my way is not the only way, there's tons of ways you can dissect a build, but the reason that I really like that primer, and I've said it in all my videos, is it is the only primer that we use. It is a hybrid epoxy. And the cool part about it being a hybrid epoxy is most epoxies, they tell you can't sand, and if you guys have sanded an epoxy in the past and it gummed up your papers or you had issues with it, this is a high build epoxy. So it is made to be blocked down. And we've got enough build out of just 3 coats with, say, a 1.8 tip in your gun that you can actually do everything instead of having to go to polyesters and having to go to urethanes and all the different steps. One product has way less failures than using 3 or 4 different kinds of primers and sealers and so forth. But we are going to seal the whole car up. We're going to put this thing on the rotisserie. And again, the best part about having it dipped is we don't have to deal with sand falling out of the body. We're going to scuff the whole thing inside by hand. We've got everything already machined, finished with the DA. We're going to seal it up, and then we're going to come back and we are going to work out the metal pieces one by one. Don't be overwhelmed sitting in your garage in your chair going, oh God, what do I do next? Look at one thing at a time, one bite at a time. If you're going to focus on the quarter, or maybe you're not capable of doing that, focus on an area that you are capable of doing and you just have to start. That's how this whole shop was created, was just starting and not giving up and just picking away at each project. I didn't think we'd end up where we are now with doing 8 at a time, and I'm thankful for that. But this all started in a garage, and I'm trying to give you guys hope and direction through this car as a start of our channel to be able to learn how to dissect each one of these things. Write it down, what can you tackle, what's your budget, and what's your timeline, and then go from there, one thing at a time. If you have a car that has excessive metalwork, this one doesn't really have that excessive for the body portion and damage, you could use an etching primer. A lot of shops don't use etching primer anymore, but it does have just enough acids in the etching primer that it will hold off flash rusting, and it's thin enough that you can still hammer and dolly it without having excessive epoxy. This car, being that this is the excess amount of the damage and the back window cancer, we're going to go ahead and we're going to seal the entire car inside and out, and then wherever we have fabrication that we're going to do, like the firewall and sectioning of the floors to fit over the Roadster Shop chassis, all that stuff can be ground and cut as we fit the car. But then we're never worrying about flash rusting. I see a lot of guys that go have their car sandblasted, and again, they're overwhelmed, so it's sitting in their garage, and over time, especially on the dependence of your humidity in your state, it will start flash rusting extremely fast. And because sandblasting is so porous, you're never going to get it all out unless you sandblast it again, and now you're warping it even more than you already did with the first time. So pick what you're going to do and just take one bite at a time. The next steps that we're going to take on this car, we are going to go through and we are going to scuff the inside with an 80 grit, so that way everything inside, outside, you're never going to have an issue with delamination. At any point of any build, you should be able to take tape, put it over any part of the car and pull it off, and it's not going to pull as long as you have a good mechanical adhesion. Chemical adhesion works good too with acid dipping, but I like to have both. I like to have a mechanical tooth of the scratch as well as the chemical adhesion as well. Going back to that, let's just say you wanted to scuff the interior of the car and epoxy it. That way maybe you watched our acid washing video and you wanted to acid wash a whole quarter panel. At that point, you're not worried about the acid going into the inside of the car and causing areas where it's flash rusting. Seal up the whole inside of your car, all the detail work and hard work. If you sandblasted the car, blow it out really good, and at that point, sandblast is your mechanical tooth. You could then seal everything up good, and then the acid does not affect the inner panels. You could actually take 1/4 at a time and acid wash that, dry it, and then epoxy and mask. I always like to go from the seam of the car and do all of my separations, no matter what we're doing. Priming, painting, everything is all the way to the seam where you don't have a tape line. So think about your project. We're gonna dive into this one. Stay tuned. We're gonna show every bit of this build for the next year or so. We'll see where it takes us, but we're gonna show you guys 1,000 horsepower, supercharged, roadster shop chassis, automatic transmission. It's gonna be sweet. So click that subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you guys next time.